Hey guys, if you enjoyed the videos on this channel, be sure to check out my second channel as well for funny videos and highlights. The link will be in the description. With so many characters in World of Warcraft, there are bound to be at least a couple out of the hundreds that exist that people are bound to hate. Some of them are just downright asshole characters that are designed and written in the office just for the sole purpose for you to hate, while others may be controversial characters that have the player base split 50-50, with one side being diehard fanboys and girls and the other half being people who want to burn them on a stake. This video will cover 5 hated characters in World of Warcraft Part 2, and just to make it clear guys, just because they are in this video does not by any means mean that I hate all of these characters. I actually like quite a few of them on here. They're only mentioned because there are a lot of people in the WoW community who do happen to think the opposite of me, and because these characters may have a pretty significant hater base. Number 5. Magatha Grimtotem. Magatha is a nasty individual who has had some seriously insidious plans during the time between Wrath of the Lich King and the Cataclysm. For those of you guys who love Bane and Cairn, it's a good chance that you also in turn hate Magatha. Magatha is the leader of the Grimtotem tribe, who believed that Cairn was too weak to lead their people. Cairn knew that both of them had their disagreements, but he would never believe that she would just outright betray him in the manner that she did, when Cairn challenged Garrosh to a Malkorok. It was at this time that Magatha made her allegiance to Garrosh and opposition to Cairn open for everyone to see, as she offered to be the one to bless Garrosh's blade in the Malkorok. However, she did not bless this blade. She coated it with such a lethal poison that it need only be exposed once to an individual in order to incapacitate him. During the battle itself, Cairn danced around Garrosh and backed Hellscream into a corner until Garrosh managed to land one blow on Cairn that grazed his skin and exposed his bloodstream to the poison coated on Gorehowl. Now incapacitated and disoriented, Garrosh took this moment to strike down his opponent, of course not realizing that Magatha had dishonorably bathed his weapons in toxins, rather than blessing it as a shaman should have. It was also during the night of this battle that Magatha ordered her Grimtotem tribe to slaughter all of the sleeping residents in Thunderbluff and the neighboring villages, including Bane Bloodhoof. However, one of her trusted lieutenants, an honorable soldier by the name of Stormsong, managed to warn the young chieftain before he could be slain in his bed. Not long after, Bane manages to rally a force to retake Thunderbluff and cast out the Grimtotems. Instead of executing all of the Grimtotems, however, Bane instead exiles those who are loyal to Magatha, but offers to accept the allegiance of those who swear fealty to him and to the Horde. Magatha, of course, was one of those who was exiled, and hopefully she spent a majority of that time in exile, scrounging for food and eating bugs, a fitting punishment for taking the life of such an honorable warrior. Number 4. Thrall. A lot of people hate Thrall, and I can kind of see why, although I will say that personally I don't have too many issues with him. Thrall prior to the Cataclysm was a pretty good character, and the only real reason why people hated him was because they saw him as an Alliance sympathizer and as way too soft to be a war chief. What with his government reforms that held honor to the highest extreme, and how he valued peace and negotiations far more than just brute force, which is a huge contrast to the old Horde, which was pretty much give me what I want or I'll drive my axe through your freaking skull. However, when the Cataclysm arrived, Thrall took off the mantle of War Chief and bestowed it upon an inexperienced hothead by the name of Garrosh Hellscream, who didn't really want the position to begin with, which led to a wide array of issues. Furthermore, Thrall wasn't there to mentor or tutor him. Instead, Thrall was in the Maelstrom trying to calm the elemental spirits, as well as having tons of trips to various dragonflights in an effort to try and ease the waning tensions that were present in that time. At one point, he even took the spot of Neltharion as the Earth Warder in a ritual where all of the dragon aspects were needed in order for the ritual to in fact succeed. This, along with many other acts that he did at the time, including having his spirit ripped apart by Fandrel's Staghelm and then later having it restored, gave him the nickname of Green Jesus, as he became less of an iconic and well-written character and more of a Mary Sue. More negative outlooks on his character as well as controversial debates would arise when Thrall used his shaman abilities to aid him in his Malkorok with Garrosh. Garrosh, not to mention that he wasn't even at Vol'jin's funeral in Legion. His is a character that first was well written, yet now is kind of tossed aside, which many people can't really accept, seeing as to how he was the person who gave rise to nearly everything the Horde has and stands for to this day. Old Thrall is definitely one of my favorite characters, but I can definitely see how his character is being looked down upon more and more with every single day. Number 3, Malkorok. In the time that Garrosh was war chief, Malkorok served as his chief advisor and muscle, pretty much. Malkorok, to cut it short, was bad news. He had a temper that was even shorter than Garrosh's and saw every race that was not an orc as inferior. Anyone who spoke out against him or Garrosh would literally be risking their lives. In some instances, people were abducted and beaten by Malkorok in the Kor'kron, stalked, threatened, or even just straight up murdered. And this ranged from random citizens in Orgrimmar, like random mushroom vendors and bag vendors, to even lieutenants and even other Horde leaders. One person who Malkorok constantly threatened was Bane. You see, before Vol'jin had his Darkspear rebellion in Mists of Pandaria, Bane was the only one who was truly voicing out his opposition against Garrosh and his military tactics and strategies, especially around the time of the bombing of Theramore. It was because of this that Malkorok constantly mocked, taunted, insulted, and even challenged Bane to a Makarov for insulting the war chief, when in essence he was just giving his 2 cents on the matter. Bane and Malkorok never actually engaged in a 1v1 since Bane didn't see it as having an outcome which would benefit the Horde, but this didn't stop him and others from continuing to voice their oppositions about Garrosh. In one instance, Malkorok got so fired up about Bane running his mouth that he grabbed both of Bane's wrists and actually twisted them pretty damn hard in an effort to try to get Bane heated so that he could swing at Malkorok first, but thankfully, Bane isn't quick to anger like at all. Otherwise, there would have been a serious throwdown right then and there. In another case, Frandus Farley and Kalantir Bloodblade, undead and Blood Elf military leaders, were overheard by Malkorok to be speaking ill of Garrosh behind his back. So what did he do? The only rational thing, of course. While they were drinking inside Razor Hills Inn, Malkorok and his Kor'kron threw grenades in and blew up both lieutenants as well as dozens of other soldiers who frowned upon Garrosh's actions on Theramore. Number 2, Garithos. You thought Garrosh was bad when he sent the trolls to the slums in Orgrimmar? Well then check this guy out. Garithos is perhaps one of the biggest douchebags and assholes in Warcraft, mainly known for his douchebaggery in Warcraft 3. Garithos was one of the only remaining military leaders in Lordaeron after Arthas and the Undead Scourge ravaged and swept through the lands. Because of this, most races that were allied with the Alliance, including the Dwarves and the Blood Elves, joined his cause or lent their support, believing that he was one of the last forms of government in Lordaeron. Among the forces that came to aid him were Prince Kael'thas and the Blood Elves, whose homes were also destroyed by the Scourge. However, despite receiving their aid, Garithos hated every single soldier that was not a human. He saw humans as superior and believed that all other races were inferior. Garithos saw it as a disgrace that he had to stoop so low to receive the aid of any non-human assistance. When Garithos found out that the Scourge were attacking them on 2 fronts, he demanded Kael'thas and only his Blood Elves to secure the western front, while demanding every other soldier that Kael'thas commanded at the time to assist him and his battalion in the forefront. He did this because he wanted and expected Kael'thas to die when he was defending the western front against the Scourge, so that Kael'thas would no longer be a nuisance to him. Of course, it was a suicide mission intended for the end result being the death of Kael and the Blood Elves, and die they most certainly would have had Vaj and her Naga not assisted him. Unfortunately, however, Garithos saw Kael'thas working with the Naga, and you can kind of imagine how furious he was to see inferior races colluding behind his back. He then sentenced all of the elves to be executed, ultimately severing whatever hopes of an alliance Kael and the Blood Elves could have created with, well, the Alliance. Luckily, however, with Vaj's help, Kael'thas and the elves escape, and Garithos not only manages to weaken his forces, but also piss off almost every single Alliance player. Good going, dude. You know, if you're gonna be a racist, at least crack some jokes about it and make yourself a little likable. Only worse thing than a racist is an unfunny racist. Number 1, Sylvanas Windrunner. Yeah guys, Sylvanas. Sylvanas the Banshee Queen is one of the most well-known characters in the history of Warcraft, but she is also one of the most highly talked about characters that gives rise to many heated controversial debates, with the fan base being divided about their take on her, just like with Garrosh. Some love her, some hate her, and with her character being developed over the course of many years, her fan base as well as the number of people who despise her have only grown throughout the expansions. Sylvanas was first introduced as a selfless character that gave her life to buy her people more time during the Scourge sacking of XLetalis, and as the years passed, her purpose was well known and made crystal clear that it was to avenge her people by slaying Arthas. However, when Arthas fell during Wrath of the Lich King, Sylvanas did not feel happy or accomplished. Instead, she felt like she no longer had a reason to be alive, well, actually undead, and she didn't feel like she had a purpose, so therefore she committed suicide by jumping off of the Spires of Icecrown and ultimately dying. In the afterlife, however, she did not experience the peace of nothingness or void. Instead, she experienced Warcraft's version of hell. Terrified about what awaited her in the afterlife, Sylvanas was resurrected by the Valkyr, and she vowed to prolong her death for as long as possible to avoid having to go to hell, thereby achieving a new purpose, to achieve immortality. This has caused a lot of people to give her flack over the years, as they see her more and more as a selfish character with her own agendas which is hidden from the public eye, which in turn creates a lot of controversy, especially when Vol'jin gave her the mantle of War Chief. Even Bane doesn't seem too happy about that idea, and even Vol'jin himself, when he was giving her the mantle of War Chief, was like, many will not understand. To add more controversy to the plate, Sylvanas also states in the novel Before the Storm that she wished to attack Stormwind, and this is directly after a full-on war with the Legion, where you think that peace might be something that the two factions would be trying to vie for. Varrock Saurfang also has his eyes closely on her, and it is stated by Sylvanas that when she looks into his eyes, she can see that Varrock could and would try to put her down if he felt as if she ever stepped out of line. So there is definitely a lot of things to debate when it comes down to Sylvanas. Even her closest advisors don't really trust her, and for good reason. When Gallywix came to Sylvanas with the prospect of mining Azerite, they spoke of the matter behind closed doors rather than with all of the leaders present out in the open, which only reinforces the idea that Sylvanas has her own agendas rather than the interest of the Horde as a whole at heart, which is a very big problem considering that this was exactly how issues arose with the Darkspear Rebellion. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos like this in the future, and until next time, I will see you all later.